Introduction, I am Joyce Patterson, and I'm the team leader for the 21st Century Grant for South Carolina. Um, so we will be sharing information about the grant itself, and then kind of further into the presentation, our grants office will share information about the grants application process. Today's session is being recorded, and we will share that with you soon. Let's see, before we get started, let me introduce the team to you. And I'm going to ask the team if they would turn on their cameras just to say hello to the folks so that you all will know who we are. Let's see, we'll start with Amy Bosch. Amy, if you would turn your camera on and say good morning. You're muted, Amy.
Good morning, guys. Sorry, I have the headphones on, all prepared, but of course I forgot to unmute myself. But good morning. I'm glad everyone's here. We're excited about this year's competition. We've worked hard to get it up and going, so we're very excited to see everyone on the call.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Cardacia Green is also one of our members, but she's out on a site visit today. Then we will go to Emily Langston. Emily.
Good morning. Looking forward to working with everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Emily. Jamal Perry. You're muted, Jamal. I'm not sure if we lost Jamal. We'll go on. Tiffany Robinson.
Good morning. Joyce, you're invisible.
Oh.
We don't see you.
Well, my camera's on, but anyway. Hey, y'all. I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but anyway. Just know that I'm happy that you're here. And then we have, last but not least, our fearless leader, Tanya Mallet Smith, who is the director of the Office of Student Support. Tanya.
Good morning, everyone. So glad to have you all on the call. As Amy said, we're excited about this round of funding for 21st Century After School programs, and I wish you all the best of luck in your submissions.
Thank you, Tanya. The grants office will also be joining us later into the presentation, and I will, at that time, they will introduce themselves to you. So with nothing else to introduce, let me go ahead and get started here. So again, let's go with okay. We're here for the technical assistance webinar, for the 21st Century grant. And just a reminder that we are reviewing the sections of the RFP in this webinar, but just keep in mind that you are still responsible for reading really cover to cover any and everything, all instructions that's laid out in the RFP, even if we don't mention it in this presentation. Ultimately, it's still on you to make sure that you are thoroughly prepared. And if you have any questions, just put anything in the chat box and we'll be certainly happy to answer your questions. The agenda, we will provide an overview of the 21st Century Grant, review the program requirements, the timeline and the key components, explain the components of the application narrative, and review the scoring rubric. 21st Century is a subgrant that's funded through the U.S. Department of Education, and you can just read the information here and how it's authorized and such. The purpose of the 21st Century program is to provide opportunities for communities to establish or expand activities in the community learning centers that, one, provide opportunities for academic enrichment for the students, offer students a broad array of additional services, programs, and activities designed to reinforce and complement, sorry about that. And where was I? There you go. And complement the academic program, and then offer families as well of the students that's going to be served opportunities for literacy and related educational development. Funding overview is laid out here, and you'll see it in the RFP as well. Just kind of gives the, the year 1 through 4. This is a 4-year grant, the maximum that you can request, and the cost per student laid out here. And it's also based on hours. You'll see the breakdown. And the funding table is continued. This is for the summer portion. That's you're not required to offer summer, but if you are anticipating having a summer program, now would be the time to apply for it within the RFP for the entire school year. Typically, we would have a reduction in years 3 and 4, but this year there won't be any reductions. The programs are expected to provide the same or the higher levels of service each year. And the programs, very important, the programs may not charge any type of fees as a means of sustaining the projects. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Emily to continue.
All right, thank you, Joyce. Eligible applicants for the 21st Century Grant include Indian tribe or tribal organizations, for-profit organizations, other public and private entities, public school districts or schools, private schools and charter schools, community-based organizations, and faith-based organizations. Ineligible applicants include organizations proposing to implement programs at schools or sites currently receiving 21st Century funds, or organizations proposing to serve students attending schools currently receiving 21st Century funds. We'll go through the different competitive priorities, priority schools, or I'm sorry, these are the links to the competitive priorities: priority schools, ESSA targeted service priorities, expanding services priority, 15 hours per week operation, and geographic equity. The timeline of the grant process: we have our webinar today. The deadline for applications is May 5th, 2025, before 4:30 p.m. You'll receive a notification of awards during July or August of 2025, and the deadline for your programs to begin will be September 8th, 2025. Target population includes students who attend schools that receive or are eligible to receive Title I school-wide assistance, schools that serve a high percentage of students from low-income families, adult family members of participating students with literacy and other educational services. Accessibility: programs operated in a facility other than a public school must utilize facilities that are available, safe, conducive to learning, and accessible as accessible as a public school. Applicants must ensure that programs are accessible to individuals with disabilities and are non-discriminatory. Include a General Education Provision Act or a GEPA statement, which is included and broken down on page 66 of the RFP. Private school consultation: applicants must consult with private schools located within the boundaries of the geographical area to be served during program planning and the development of their application. Statutory and other requirements: adhere to all statutory, federal, and state program requirements. Adhere to 2 CFR Part 200 uniform administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements for federal awards. Adhere to all assurances and terms and conditions for federal subawards and program-specific assurances. Must provide a valid UEI from the Federal System for Award Management, or SAM.gov. SCDE is responsible for monitoring the 21st Century programs of the subgrantees to ensure that the grant requirements are consistently being met and that the program remains in compliance with the regulations. Fidelity bonding and general liability coverage: primary applicants that are not school districts must furnish to the SCDE a fidelity bond listed in favor of the SCDE before grant funds will be released. This must be issued in the amount equal to the total of the annual grant award. A primary applicant that is not a school district must also secure a general liability policy in the amount of no less than 1 million per occurrence. The SCD must be listed as an additional insured and as a certificate holder. And these costs for getting your fidelity bond and general liability coverage can be included in the budget. All right, and I will pass it over to Amy.
Good morning. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some of the areas that your application, the narrative, needs to focus on in your program. So there's 5 focus areas with the 21st Century program. The first one is your academic achievement. So within your narrative and within your program development, you need to make sure you're serving the 3 core subject areas, which are the ELA, the reading, and the math. Now, your other subjects can be included, but they're not required, and that would be like social studies, STEM, science. So make sure you have the academic achievement component. Your second focus area would be your attendance. And the third area is behavior. The fourth is your family literacy component. And the fifth is sustainability. So you want to make sure all the focus areas are discussed in your narrative. A little bit more information in regard to the academic focus. Like I said before, your 3 core areas, ELA, reading, and math, is required. During the academic component of your program, the ratio needs to be 10-1. Now, if you have, that's your certified teacher, but you can also include your assistants as far as that ratio goes. And then your program needs to be aligned with your South Carolina state standards. And we do recommend that when possible, you use certified instructors in the core areas. And thinking about your academic focus, generally a good rule of thumb is 50% of your day. So if your program is 3 hours long, an hour and a half of that program would need to be focused on your academic component. Hours of operation. So the minimum amount of hours is 10 to have a 21st Century program. And we also 4 days a week, Monday through Friday, for at least 4 days a week. A lot of programs do Monday through Thursday, and some programs do Monday through Friday. And we need a minimum of 30 weeks. So if you do the math there, 30 times 4 is 120 days is what we're looking for. We do ask that you, when you're doing your proposal, to be realistic. We have some programs that write their programs from Monday through Friday, and then halfway through, they're like, hey, Fridays are too much. We're not able to staff. The students don't attend on Fridays. And so there's a lot of situations that we cannot do anything about that at that point. So we ask that you really talk to your stakeholders and be very realistic about the operation hours of your program. So like I said, the minimum is 10, and so you need to operate at least 10 hours, 4 days a week. It needs to be consistent, and that's just, so you cannot operate 4 days 1 week, 5 days 1 week. It needs to be a very consistent schedule. You are allowed to operate 30 minutes per day before school to count towards your hours. So, and also I ask that you be realistic about that, because we run into some programs or problems that students are not there able to get to the school 30 minutes before, or the attendance is not what it needs to be in those before hour programming. So just be realistic there. And then the maximum you can do that before school would be 2.5 hours, and that's the 30 minutes per day. So lack of transportation, majority of our programs do include a transportation component, but if for some reason you do not, it's very important in the narrative that you state why you're not doing that and how it's not going to cause a problem with your students getting to the program and getting home from the program. Saturday activities are optional. but must not take the place of after-school programming. So that's a day that you would do like your family literacy events or your field trips. So we do have a lot of programs that do monthly field trips on Saturdays or family events on Saturdays. And then summer operations are also optional as well. But like Joyce said in the earlier slides, if you're planning on doing a summer program, it's important that you go ahead and plan for that and include that in your initial proposal and budget. High school programs are a little bit different. So we do allow you to count some Saturday hours towards the 10 hours for summer. So we do realize with the high schoolers getting out later and with the demands of work and other activities for the high schoolers that there is a little bit of flexibility on that 10 hours per week. And just and a little bit different than the elementary and middle, you cannot operate before school on the high school level. And just like the elementary and middle school, lack of transportation cannot hinder your students from attending. So you want to make sure you have transportation services in place. And summer operations are optional. And just a reminder, especially if you are working with a district, if you're a non-ELA, you want to make sure you have a MOA with the superintendent and the principal signature. And that's for each school. If you're serving 3 different schools, you would need the superintendent and 3 principals' signatures on that MOA. If you're a school district and you're working with a vendor or your partner, that's where you would do your MOAs with that person. But if you're a non-school district, it's very important that you have this. This is a required document, is to have that agreement between your organization and the school district. That includes the superintendent and the principal signatures. Just a reminder that there is to be no cost associated with attending. So you're not even allowed to charge $5 for a field trip. So no cost can be collected and no fundraising. Authorized activities. Funds must be used to support activities designed to raise student achievement, improve the attendance behavior, increase the family literacy. Activities must take place during after school and before school and during breaks on weekends and summer breaks. So you're not allowed to operate 21st century activities during the school day. Unauthorized activities, that includes funds cannot be used to support activities during the regular school day. You cannot use the funds for food. You cannot use the funds to provide or support religious activities or fundraising. This is just a reminder that your grant period is August the 1st through July 31st. And yet you, the subgrantee, must maintain direct control of the total subgrantee award during the entire cycle. And at the end of the funding period, the year, any funds not spent will have to come back to SCDE, and so they do not roll over from year to year. And matching and in-kind funds are not required, but they do help fulfill that 5th focus area of sustainability. Allowable costs include salaries, benefits, transportation, supplies, materials, field trips, technology, and curriculum. Unallowable is food, non-educational field trips, gift cards, equipment over $5,000, marketing, vehicle, and constructions. And just a side note about the field trips, when you're doing your 21st century field trips, there is a prior approval that's needed for all field trips. Okay, supplement, not supplant. All 21st century subgrantee funds must be supplemented, not supplanted. Existing services may not be used to supplant federal, state, local, or non-federal funds. Projects may not use subgrant funds to pay for existing levels of services funded from another sources or any other services mandated by state, federal, or local law. All right, this is my favorite part of 21st Century is the review process. We feel very good about the review process. We've worked hard to get it down. So each application is reviewed by 3 peer reviewers. You can score up to 100 points. Applications with an average of 80 or higher will be eligible for funding and assign your priority points. So there are several ways you can get priority points. We'll review those, and those will be assigned if your application receives at least 80 points. And they will be added to your average score. Applications will be ordered from highest to lowest based on your total score. We're going to average those 3 reviewers' score. The highest score in applications will be considered for funding. Prior to making the awards, our auditing offices will conduct a pre-award risk assessment, and special conditions may be applied. For LEAs, results of the 2024 risk assessment required will be a part of your pre-award risk assessment. And we reserve the right to interview applicants recommended for funding. For additional documentation, we may even come out for a visit. And if you're currently receiving 21st Century funding or a recompeting applicant who has had funding in the past, we will also take into account your previous history performance. So that is the review process. All right. All right, just a quick moment to take a breather and see if there's any questions up to this point. You can use the chat if there's any questions.
Amy, I haven't seen any in the chat, but I did just want to reiterate to everyone, in case they missed it in the chat box, that these slides and recording will be shared out to everyone who's registered. And they'll also be posted to the website where the RFP is located. And I went ahead and put that link in the chat for anyone who needs it.
I do see that there is a question in the chat box asking about if there are any restrictions for virtual or hybrid schools. Let me just say that you need to know your students, your families. During COVID, that was kind of the rule of the land because we weren't able to necessarily meet in schools. So you just need to make sure that you still would have your same level of participants. And, you know, the kids will, we often say they'll vote with their feet if they are not happy, if they are not, for whatever reason, you know, excited about coming, then they won't show up even virtually. So just consider that.
And I also see a question about the 65%. So for those who may be new to 21st Century, there is a rule when you're doing your budget that no more than 65% of your total allotted budget can be used for salaries and benefits. It's important to also include benefits on that 65%. But we're hoping with the higher pay per allotment per student, we're hoping that becomes a little bit easier for you guys. But there is the 65% rule is still there.
All right, we're going to continue on. If you have questions, just continue to put them in the chat box. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone again. We're going to go over the application narrative format. For the length of the narrative, you need to have a maximum of 18 pages. It has to be in Times New Roman, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, Tiffany, can you advance your slide? We're still seeing the old slide.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Did it advance?
Yes.
Do y'all see it? Okay. The font size has to be 12 with Times New Roman or Arial, 1 inch on all sides, bottom right of the page. All pages of the application narrative must be numbered, double space, also in a PDF document. Selection criteria. We will have the application sections, which will consist of the proposal abstract, the needs statement, project design, management, adequacy of resources and sustainability, timeline of activities, budget forecast and narratives, which will equal up to 100 points, and then as well as the competitive priority points, which will be 30 points. That'll give you a cumulative points of 130. The proposal abstract should be on 1 page, and it should be the proposed project, the number of students to be served, the unique name of the project, if there is any, the primary application's name, the amount of funds requested, and the list of collaborating partners. Your needs statement must explain the process and its findings, including all 3 of the following: involvement of collaborative partners in these assessment processes, needs of the community, and the needs of the school or schools. Also, it must provide the needs of the students to be served, including any specific student data pertaining to the needs to be addressed and the needs of students' families to be served. Your needs statement also must explain current after-school programs operating at the proposed site and includes all 6 of the following: number of students being served, number of paid staff, source of funding, how many days or hours per week the program will be operating, how the proposed 21st Century Project will operate in conjunction with any existing program, as well as the impact of proposed projects on students served. The project design 2A will have the performance goals and objectives, and the applicant must provide a narrative that addresses all of the following as applicable to their proposed project. They must meet or exceed state and local academic achievement standards in ELA, reading, and math, and show improvement in the performance measures of schools attendance, classroom performance, and reduce disciplinary referrals. The required objectives to be attained under performance goals 1 and 2, and it also must identify the needs. The applicant must also provide a narrative provide SMART objectives, performance measures that fully address the following 3 performance goals. Students regularly participating in the program will demonstrate additional positive social and behavior changes. Families of students regularly participating in the program will be offered opportunities for family literacy activities and services, and subgrantees will have a strategy in place to support program sustainability. The applicant must also provide a narrative for the following specific activities for students, describe the specific activities that will be undertaken if a summer program will be operating, how the proposed academic and enrichment activities are based upon the components of the measure of effectiveness regarding evidence-based research and best practices. If a summer program will be operating, discuss how the instructional activities and teaching strategies are designed to be innovative and engaging. Student and family support, which will also be included in the project design. The project services, including meals and activities to be provided to support students in public and private and their families, including how many family members will be served. Additional social or behavioral services that will be provided to support student successes. The types of snacks that will be served daily, how they will be prepared, and the source of funds. Specific activities that will be provided to address the literacy and related educational needs to the participants' families, and services that will be provided during the summer program, if applicable. And then the evaluation strategies must include the outcome measures that will be used to assess the impact of the proposed 21st century on student learning and behavior. You must also describe the types of data that will be collected, how and when the data will be collected and analyzed, and who will be responsible for each data collection, and how results will be presented and demonstrated that each objective has been met. You must also explain how data will be analyzed, reported, and subsequently used to improve the overall quality of the project or the activity. And also identify the different audiences who will be provided with the evaluation data and reports. And I think I turn it over to Jamal, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct. Thank you. I am actually a live person. I'm not a bot. I'm sorry about that earlier. My computer had other ideas this morning, so welcome. And I will pick up in the management section. Um, let's see, management, this is 3A. In this section, we want you to explain how you will efficiently and effectively operate the program and address any challenges that you foresee and how they'll be resolved. For you to address this issue, we need you to provide evidence of previous success of you operating educational enrichment programs to complement and enhance academic performance of students and also their families. A big component of 21st century, you have to serve not only students, but you also have to serve their families as well by providing some type of activities or assistance for them also. Also, we need you to include evidence of previous managing or coordinating similar programs or activities and the ability to provide those services on time and within budget. All right, we're continuing on with management. We need you to further address how you're going to staff your program. So we need job descriptions and qualifications of all key staff that you plan to help operate the program. Also, we need you to describe plans for the budget. If you plan to offer any staff training, professional development, we need to know the topics, the potential facilitators, and how often you plan to offer the professional development for your staff. Next, we need to describe the project and how it was developed and conducted in collaboration with any organizations, school districts, any community organizations, or any churches or any other area, public and private organizations within your community. Next, in management, we need you to identify and create an advisory council and explain that council's role and how they help to plan, implement, and monitor and make any necessary adjustments that may be needed for your program. And also, we need to know their meeting schedule as they are required to meet at least 4 times per year. Excuse me. All right, next we need you to describe your plans to coordinate with any other federal, state, or local programs in order to make the best use of not only 21st century funds, but the other funds that may be available to help you serve these students and families without supplanting. So you can coordinate with Title I, McKinney-Vento, or any other local or state programs that you have available for your students because most of these programs, we are all serving the same students. So to address the whole child and whole family, coordination would be best if possible. All right, next we're continuing management. Next in this section 3B, we need to explain the strategies on how you're going to disseminate the information about the 21st Century Program to the community in a manner that's accessible and understandable for everybody. And also, we need to know how you plan to make the community aware of your intention on applying for the grant application and making it available for public review. So in this instance, you can have a printed copy out, social media posting of the application is fine as well. However, we just need to make sure that it's available and accessible for everyone to view it. All right, the next section is adequacy of resources and sustainability. Section 4A, we want you to describe the adequacy of resources so that you'll be able to successfully launch and operate your 21st Century Program. So again, you need to address proper staffing so you can make sure that you maintain the 10-to-1 ratio during academic instruction and that you also have adequate coverage during any enrichment activities. To explain how the supervision and management of those resources are going to be handled and include any plans to recruit and recruit volunteers, especially senior students, to help you in your program. Next, we need you to describe the site to be used. We need details of the footage, any safety measures, accessibility, equipment, and any other resources that are available that makes your site very welcoming and engaging and inviting for 21st century program students. And last, we need you to describe any partner contributions, being financial or non-financial. It could be food, facilities, materials, supplies, anything that your partner agrees upon with you. You need to list that here. And we'd also like to see an MOU or MOA attached as well. Okay, continuing with resources and sustainability. This section, we need you to describe the transportation plan, how the students are going to be transported to and from the program, from the school to home, before school, after school, any time the students need to be transported. We need to know that information in this section. And also who will provide the transportation for the project, how will it be funded. If you plan to use 21st century funds to offer transportation, we should see that information in the budget narrative as well. And we also need to know how many buses, the capacity, how many students it can carry. Will it be school district? Will it be private buses if you're a CBO or something like that? Continuing on, if you're a non-school site CBO, we need to know the round trip distance from your site to the school from the site to home, or how. We just need to know all the various details of your transportation plan, as far as how long it'll take, the routes will take from the site to home, how many students are going to ride each bus, contingency plan if fuel costs increased, just the overall logistics. So the parents going to come in. If you're not going to offer transportation, what's your pickup and drop off rules, routines, so that we're aware, and that the parents that are participating, allowing their students to participate so that they're aware of the rules as well. And any other type of transportation details. If you plan to take the students on field trips, that needs to be included as well. All right, continuing on with resources and sustainability for C. In this section, we need you to describe how the 21st century will continue to operate without changing scope of service as grant funds end. So you need to provide details and descriptions of your sustainability objectives. Basically, what's your plan? Tell us how you plan to sustain the program once the 21st century funding ends. So in this section, give us the plan, name of any partners and their commitments, again, financial and in kind, any other sources of funds, and just what are your strategies that you're going to use to create sustainability in your program. And again, as mentioned earlier, you cannot charge students' parents to attend the 21st century program. All right, the next section, we're moving to section 5. We're talking about timeline of activities and the project weekly schedule. The timeline of activities is like a 1,000-foot view of your program. It's major events that you plan on happening. Plan on hiring staff in July. We're planning on doing onboarding in August. Plan on professional development in September. So those key activities, those major milestones that you plan on hitting during your program year. The next portion is the project weekly schedule, which is the more scaled down version. What is your week going to look like? How's my program going to flow during the week? Monday, we're going to do, the kids come in at 3. They're going to eat snack from 3 to 3:15. Then they're going to transition to the classroom. 3:20, they're going to start math sessions, and so on and so forth. So Monday, Tuesday, whatever your weekly schedule, your routine is for that day, we should see it outlined in your weekly schedule. All right, the next section is the budget summary and the budget forecast and budget narrative. This is where you tell us, again, you've told us in the project abstract how much money you request. This is where you give us the breakdown of where the money is going to go, or where the money is going to be allocated. So the summary is just going to be quick lines with the amount, salary 60,000, benefits 10,000, supplies and materials 20,000, so on and so forth. What we need to see in the budget forecast and narrative is more detail. In the narrative, we need to see calculations, and then you need to make sure the calculations actually reflect the correct amount that you're requesting. And we're going to go through the budget and make sure that you're asking for things in the budget line items that go back or tie into what you told us you wanted to do in the rest of the narrative. So if you didn't mention anything about offering soccer enrichment, we shouldn't see soccer balls, or we shouldn't see somebody paying a soccer coach. If you mention that if you do mention we won't plan to offer soccer as an enrichment, we should see something in the budget that coincides with that information in the narrative. Okay, things to consider for the budget. Make sure that there's clear evidence that is justified and based on the needs assessment. Your application should flow from the beginning to the end. So from the abstract to the budget, everything should coincide or be aligned. So you need to provide clear evidence that everything is appropriate. Again, it aligns with what you said you wanted to do in the narrative, and include any estimates of matching funds or in-kind as applicable. All right, just rehashing some things from earlier budget calculations. Again, the cost per student cannot exceed $2,200. Salaries and benefits, as we mentioned earlier, cannot exceed 65% of the total budget, because at the end of the day, these programs are the money is for the kids, and we want a majority of that money to go directly to the kids and kids services. Anything that you plan to do, activities as far as bringing in enrichments, field trips, we want a lot of that money to go to the students. And when you're considering your budget, make sure that the things that you're requesting, the amounts you're requesting, are reasonable, necessary, and appropriate. So you may have to do a little digging to see who has the best price or who's providing the best service for the best price. So it's going to take a little legwork on your part. Don't just go with the first one that you find. So you have to do a little research to make sure that the costs are appropriate and according to the market. Okay, next we'll talk about grant fund disbursements. The 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant is a reimbursable grant. So you must spend your money and then request reimbursement through our GAP system. No funds can be obligated prior to the receipt of a grant award notice. No expenditures can be incurred prior to August 1st, which is the beginning of the project year. So you cannot have somebody doing grant activities and then expect them to be prior to August 1st and then expect them to be reimbursed after you get the grant. That cannot be done. So applicants, especially our CBOs, just make sure that you have 3 months of sustainable funds prior to implementing this program. All right, so more budget parameters. Programs are not permitted to reduce scope of services. When you're writing your grant, I want you to think about it honestly and realistically. Can I serve 100 students, or should I scale it down to 60? So be realistic about what you're doing when you're writing this grant, because you're being scored based on what you present to us and the readers. And then you're also maybe receiving priority points based on what you said in the grant, what you said in your application. So just have a realistic conversation with whoever's writing the application and think about your community and what's going on at your school needs and how you can realistically serve a certain amount of students. Next, you need to make sure the MOAs include any financial commitments, any in-kind donations, or any monetary donations that your partner may be willing to offer your program. And my last slide, this is just an example of what your budget narrative could look like. Notice in the boxes, we have a description of what we're asking for. You see the calculation. The calculation matches the amount of funds requested. Your budget narrative should look like this. There should be calculations for each line item. If not, then it may get kicked back to you. Are there any questions? If not, I will turn this back over to Emily.
Thank you, Jamal. All right, appendices, certification signature page. Your GEPA statement should be included. Request for tax identification number and certification. Private school confirmation form. Memorandums of agreement. Resume of project director. Indirect cost rate agreement if applicable. And a multi-year program design and performance form. You will have the certification signature page. Applicant certifies to abide by SCDE's assurances and terms and conditions by signing the certification signature page. Obtain all signatures prior to submitting your application. Some helpful tips. Make sure you read the RFP document thoroughly. As Joyce stated, this presentation is not a substitute for reading the RFP. If there was anything that wasn't included in this presentation, you are still expected to review it in the RFP document. Follow the structure and order that is outlined in the RFP using all titles and subtitle headings. Answer all questions and address issues in the order they are presented in the RFP. Make note of all must-have items, create a timeline and checklist, collect and write up all information before editing, use clear, concise language, create paragraphs that focus on one point and are developed thoroughly. After you finish your draft, set it aside for a day, go back and revise it, make sure someone else reads it to check for errors, and ensure all required documents are fully executed and have valid signatures. Some common mistakes that are made, submissions after established deadline, guidelines are not followed, incomplete applications, calculation errors, inconsistent information, budget narratives are not detailed, program costs are greater than benefits, lack of specific data and or evidence, poorly written or missing required signatures. So again, we just really encourage to make sure that you have a second set of eyes on your application and going through it for revisions. And we will take a moment to pause for questions. I have not noticed any in the chat box, but if anyone has any at this time, please feel free to drop those there.
I don't see any. I'm just going to jump in real quick if y'all don't mind.
Mhm.
We cannot stress upon you enough. We've seen this year after year after year. Do not wait until the due date to start putting your information into the system. The team is probably shaking their head behind the scenes like, yes, we've seen. Compile your information. Emily just said, make sure you have somebody else to review it. Make sure you collect all the signatures that you need. Principals, superintendents, we know they're busy. Principals are busy. So start collecting those signatures prior to 2 days before the applications due, because sometimes they're at a conference or they're sick. So make sure that you are not waiting till the last day to start uploading your information. Probably want to start maybe a week or so out, just for any unforeseen issues. We've seen it time and time again. I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
Thank
I
you,
was just going to
Jamal.
add
Go
a
ahead.
comment to that the deadline is very hard, that we've had power outages, we have death in families, and there's just nothing we can do about it. So it's a very hard deadline. The deadline does fall on a Monday. So I recommend, having it done at least the Friday before, but definitely the earlier the better. Sorry, Joyce, that was probably some of the same thing you were going to say.
That is correct. We've seen, thunderstorms and what have you. And so rarely, but if it's widespread, then we might reconsider, but it's just best that you not stress us and stress yourself and wait till the last day to try to upload because anything could happen. All right, that's it.
Joyce, we do have a few questions in the chat. If you don't mind answering them, I will read them for you. The first one is, do we anticipate any delays in making awards due to federal funding?
I don't know the answer to that. We don't know the answer to that. We've just been told, really what we hear in the news is what you hear as well. That's all I can say about that one. I don't see any that's it. I'm sorry.
Someone said, I see the bonus points for schools for certain districts. What about statewide virtuals?
That's not currently considered, I don't think, in our bonus points. For this year, it might be something that we can really kind of look at and consider going forward. But for this round, what's stated in RF is kind of what it is.
Okay, and then the last question, which Jamal answered in the chat. I'm new to South Carolina. Would the application be submitted to a system such as CCIP in North Carolina? And as Jamal said, the grants office will give an overview of the system needed to upload your application.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
These are great questions. Keep them coming. For now, we'll just keep continuing with our presentation. Thank you.
All right, just some reminders. Refer to your RFP as your guide through the grant application process. You cannot return to the application once it is submitted. If needed, re-enter the entire application. Only the last completed submission will be reviewed. Your contact person will receive an email confirmation and a copy of the application submitted. And then if you have any questions throughout the process, please reach out to our shared email account, 21stcclc@ed.sc.gov. We do have one more question in the chat. Are there bonus points for serving students with disabilities?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. And with that, we will turn the presentation over to Audrey Shiflett with the Office of Grant Services.
Thank you very much. I just want to say hello to everyone and welcome you today. I'm going to turn off my camera to get started, but we're going to be walking through the application. And I'm Audrey Shiflett. I'm with the Office of Grant Services here at the agency. And my objective for this portion of the webinar is to offer you guidance on organizing the information that you need to have ready and available before you go in and start the online application form. And I'm also going to walk you through the application form to prepare you for being successful in your submitting of your sub-grant application. So just as a reminder, and you've heard this before from Jamal and others, read the entire request for proposals before you begin anything, and especially before you begin going on into the online application form. We have everything that you need for your application on a grant opportunity website for this competition. I'll show you how to locate that in just a moment. Your applications must be submitted using our online form. It is not through any other system, so you will need to use the link. There is one on the Grant Opportunities website. There is also one within the electronic version of the request for proposals. As it has already been mentioned, and I want to reinforce this strongly, you should begin uploading your application well ahead, a few days ahead of the deadline, to allow for any technical problems, any weather problems, anything, because at 4:30 on May 5th, the application closes, which means if you are in the midst of applying, you missed the deadline. So, and there is not a way for us to reopen that for you. So don't wait until the last minute to begin the online application. And these are just more reminders here. that
Audrey,
may-
are you able to take control? I don't think we're seeing the slides as you're advancing through them. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. So the deadline for applying is 5 p.m. on 4:30 p.m. on May 5th. As I said, if you're in the system at that time and you haven't hit submit yet, you will be locked out. So we strongly recommend that you start a few days out. A good rule of practice is to start a week out, and that way you've got enough time that if you find a problem, and I'll show you at a later point in this presentation how to check the data that you have entered into the form, and how to check once you get an email from the system that your form has been submitted. If you find a problem or some errors in what you submitted, you can always resubmit an application up until the 4:30 deadline on May 5th. The latest version that you submit will be used, but understand that no one here at the agency can get into an application for you or return it to you once it has been submitted. So if you do find problems, you will need to upload a new application. So we have a grant opportunities website. If you go to our SCDE main website at ed.sc.gov and scroll down to the very bottom section of highlights, that's where our grant opportunities is housed. And if you click that, you will go to a main page that shows all of the open competitions that we have available right now. And currently, the top link is to the Nina M. Lowy 21st Century Community Learning Centers program subgrant. And when you click that, you'll go to the competition page. And this has a full description of the program, the information about eligible applicants. And if you go down, scroll down further, there's information about the documents that are needed for completing a full application. Be sure that you are getting your documents from this page, which is the 2025-26 competition. Do not Google for the 21st Century Community Learning Centers competition, because you run the risk of getting old forms and old competition materials. And although we shut that stuff down on our end, things live forever on the internet. So that's why we encourage you to go to our website, make sure you're at this current competition, and get your documents from this location so that they are the most current and they're the ones that you will need. So now I'm going to show you a few things that you need to be focused on before you go in and start that online application form. One is to complete the attachments, and they've already been mentioned. And Jamal also mentioned getting those signatures on the certification signature page early so that you're not worried about folks being out sick or signatories just not being available to sign that form when you need it. You will also need to save the documents for the attachments as you're directed in the request for proposals. We have the page number here. And you need to gather all the information that you're going to need for the input fields on the online forms section. So we're going to go ahead and look at those. And we provide you with screenshots in the RFP for those. And these online sections include a lot of contact information, but things like the competitive priorities, which you'll see, you're going to have your application narrative finished before you're going to be able to complete this competitive priorities section of the online application. So again, before you go to this form, focus on gathering the information that you will need for these online form sections and getting all your attachments completed and ready to go. And that will make things easier once you get into the form. So at this point, we're going to look at the organization of the online form. It's in two parts. There is the online form sections, which is basically data entry. And then there is the last section is attachments. We're going to walk through each part of the form here, but I also want to call to your attention right now, if you are not a school district applicant, which is referred to as an LEA, a local education agency within the request for proposals, then you will need to complete the pre-award audit questionnaire through the hyperlink that's on page 35 in the request for proposals. This is a change from previous 21st Century Community Learning Center competitions. So be sure and do this again if you are not a school district applicant, and you're going to want to make a note of this link on page 35. So the online form sections, like I said, it's a lot of contact information. We're going to walk through it, but you're going to need to have information about your collaborating partners, the details of the program that you're proposing, and your funding information and your budget summary. So let's look at these sections right quickly. The applicant information section, and this is the first screen of the online application. This is where you're going to enter the official name of the primary or lead applicant organization. And I guess, again, this should be the formal name, no abbreviations. If your applicant, you are applying as a school, you're going to be prompted to enter the name of your school district. Again, formal name, no abbreviations. And then you will need to be sure and enter your unique entity identifier and your tax identification number. Contact your finance office if you're not aware of what these are. And there's more information about these in part 1 of the request for proposals. And just understand that this is a federal subaward, and the federal government requires us to use the full zip code +4. So we ask you to provide us with that in this section of the online form. At the bottom of this first screen, you will be directed to enter a descriptive title for your proposed project and then answer whether or not you are applying for competitive priority points. If you are applying for competitive priority points, you will need to indicate which of the 5 priorities you're seeking and include the page numbers in your application narrative where the reviewers can find evidence that your application is eligible for these competitive priority points. There is more information in the RFP about this, so be sure again to have your application narrative completed and ready before you start the application form. The next section of the form is where you'll enter the contact information for your authorized official. This is your district superintendent if you're a school district, or the CEO or executive director of your organization if you are not a school district. Again, use the formal name, no abbreviations, nicknames, things like that. And the authorized official's name must match the name of the person who signs on the certification signature page, which again must be the district superintendent or the executive director or CEO of your organization. The next section of the form is where you'll provide the contact information for the primary contact person. Now, this is the person who will be contacted related to all matters about this application. If their mailing address is the same as your organization contact or your authorized official's mailing address, there is same as applicant organization's address box. You can check there and that address will pre-populate. You will also be asked here to enter this person's email address twice. That's because this contact person is going to receive the email confirmation of your application submission. So we ask you to enter the email twice as a verification. Be sure this email address is correct because it'll be very important to receiving that email confirmation of your submission information. The next section of the form is where you will enter in the contact information for the project director, if that's a different person from the contact person, and your financial official for your organization. And again, the financial official's name needs to match what is on the certification signature page because the program office will be seeking to vet and check those things when they get your application. Next in the form is where you'll begin giving some program information, and it starts with your collaborating partners. Here you can add between 1 and 3 of the primary collaborating partners, and these are the partners that are directly involved in the project on a regular, ongoing basis. Once you select the number, the information fields for each corresponding organization will be displayed based on the number you've selected. So here you'll enter the official name of the partner organizations. Again, no abbreviations, no acronyms, and you'll enter the name of the authorized representative and their contact information here. So again, this is all information. It would be helpful for you to use the screenshots to gather in advance before you start completing the application form. The next part of the form is where you will enter the number of school districts that you are proposing to serve. And depending on the number of districts you enter there, you can enter up to 3. Additional form fields will open where you will enter the district's name or multiple names. Again, no abbreviations, no acronyms. And then the number of schools that you will be serving within that district and their names. The program information goes on about your year 1 project dates, and these should be dates between August 1st, 2025 and the end of the project of July 31st, 2026. These are not the funding period dates. So these would be the dates that your program is actually going to operate. After this, you'll select the types of programs that you're proposing. If you're going to have a before school component, after school, if you're going to have activities on weekends, and especially if you're going to have activities over the summer, you need to indicate that here. You'll also enter the days of the week in which the activities will be scheduled. and the actual hours of operation. This will be the times that the project will be operating. For example, for after school, if you'll be operating such as like between 3:30 p.m. and 6 o'clock p.m. You will also enter the total number of weeks the project will operate during the academic year. And then if you indicated summer programming, there will be a section of the form for you to give the same types of information about the summer program that you're proposing, including the number of weeks and the specific days of the week that your program will be operating. The next section of the application form is where you will indicate all the activities that will be offered for your project. And there are a number of activities here. You probably can't see them on the screen, but they are in the screenshot in the RFP. And if you're going to be providing an activity that's not listed with one of these boxes, please enter that in the other form field at the bottom and provide a brief description of what that activity is. The next part of the form is where you will indicate the number of proposed sites that your project will operate. You can select up to 4, and then the information fields will display for each site based on the number that you selected. In these information form fields, you'll enter the site name, the address, and contact information for a person at that site. You'll indicate the number of students to be served by each site and the schools they attend. You'll include the hours and days of operation if they differ from the schedules provided in the program information section, which was previously. And if the site is not a school, you're going to need to indicate how far away it is from the school. Then you will also indicate by yes or no if an after-school program is currently operating at this site that you're proposing to serve. If you clicked yes, that there is an after-school program currently operating at that site, additional forms sections will open for you to complete. You will need to provide the number of students being served at the current program and the schedule of operations. If you clicked no, you won't see these form fields in the application form, and you'll go on to the next section, which if you clicked yes about a summer program being offered at the site, there will be form fields for you to provide additional information about the current summer program that's being provided. And again, these are similar to the fields for the regular program information that you've already provided in the form. And again, if you clicked no, you will not see this summer program information for the current summer program. The next part of the input section of the form is about the funding information, and it will lead you to the budget summary. But the first thing to understand here is this is for year 1 funding on the left, and then the full 4 years of funding for the form field on the right. And please use whole dollar amounts. If your proposed budget is coming up with cents, just round up or round down as applicable. And then the second section of this screen is where you'll enter your budget summary for the project. And these will be line item breakdowns of the funds that you're requesting for the first year of the project. And you'll also include any amount of in-kind or matching funds that are being invested by other sources. The total project cost fields for each column and the total project budget for each line item will auto calculate. So you don't have to worry about those, but you will want to check and ensure that they are totaling correctly, and that this information matches what you have in the budget attachment. That we'll talk about that in a minute, but you want to be sure that all of this information is correct and consistent between what you have in this budget summary form and what is in your budget attachment. If some of these form or line items do not apply, enter 0. Don't leave them blank, because the program won't know if you intended to leave it blank or if you just missed entering something that was important. At the very bottom, you will enter the indirect cost rate if you are going to be requesting indirect costs as part of your budget. This will be the indirect cost rate that has been approved by the primary applicant organization's cognizant federal agency. That would be the federal agency from which your organization receives the most funds. You also need to enter the beginning and end dates for that indirect cost rate agreement, and you'll want to provide a copy of that agreement in the attachments that you will upload later. So at this point, I'm going to jump away from the form and give you some instructions on how you can leave and return to an incomplete application form if you need to, because, I've been encouraging you to get everything ready before you start the form so you can just complete the form and submit and be done. But we understand things can happen that mean you have to save your form and leave it. So you can do that easily by going to the bottom of any of these form pages. You will see at the very bottom a progress indicator, which by shading, or actually they've updated it now, it will tell you what page you're in of how many pages. And right above that progress indicator is a link that says save and return later. So this is a multi-step process. The first step is just click that save and return later, and it will immediately take you to a little screen where you will be asked to create a password so you can securely save your application and retrieve it later. Please be sure to save your password somewhere where you can retrieve it, because no one in the 21st Century Community Learning Center's office here at the agency and no one in Grant Services can help you get to your saved form. This is a secure link, especially for you and your form. If you lose it, you'll just have to start over, because we cannot access your saved form at all. Once you've created your password, click the Save and Get Link button, and it will take you to another pop-up screen which will give you some options. You have the option of copying and saving the hyperlink. And again, save it with your password somewhere where you know where it is, where you won't lose it. You can also give your email address, and the system will send you an email with the link where you can access your form again. Now, if you choose the option of getting the email, be sure to check and make sure you've received the email with the link before you close out of the form. Because again, no one here at our agency can access your saved application at all. So if you miss getting that email, you can ask the system to resend the email. Be sure and check your junk email box. Be sure and, check all of those places where the email may have gone if you didn't receive it. Again, before you close out of the form so that you have that. And the little bottom clip here is a screenshot of what the email will look like. It will come from FormStack, and it will give you a link to your saved form. So it's important for you to understand that you don't have to save your application form in order to submit it. As a matter of fact, we don't encourage you to save the form unless you absolutely have to leave it as incomplete and get out of it for one reason or another. That's why we encourage you to read the RFP, get all your documents saved in together, get all of your information for the input form fills, and then go in and complete the application form in one sitting. If you have to save the form, understand that there are things that don't save. Your attachments, if you've gotten that far in the form, your attachments will not save. Also, your contact person who's going to receive that email confirmation, their email address will not save. So you will have to enter that information again once you access the form. We also encourage you strongly, if you are more than 30 days out from the deadline of the application, set a reminder for you to go in and access the form again before 30 days pass, because after 30 days, your form expires. And again, there is nothing we can do to grant you access to an expired form or, even your saved form. If you enter the form, like that 30-day window, that 30-day time period starts over. So just keep that in mind if you do have to save your form. So at this point, we're going to go back to the application form for the last section, which is attachments. And we encourage you to focus on getting these done and complete and finalized before you start your application. So the FormStack form that we used has updated. You now have the ability to drag and drop your documents that you've saved. Be sure to use the instructions in the request for proposals to save each of these attachments in the format that is required, because the FormStack form will not let you attach a document if it is not in the correct format. In your appendices, which is the last attachment, all of these items are required to be saved. And there are instructions on pages 34 and 35 of your request for proposals. So be sure to follow that in compiling your appendices attachment. And then when you have all of your attachments ready, you'll go to this section of the form. Again, you can drag and drop, or you can browse to the selected file, attach it, and then once you have attached a file, you will see the name of that file in the list of attachments. If you realize, oops, I attached the wrong file there, there will be an X or a little trash can where you can delete that file and reattach, either by drag and drop or browsing and selecting that way. There is a file size limit for all of those attachments at 35 megabytes. Fortunately, folks don't run into this often, but if you do, we have some suggestions for how you can minimize your file size. basically by ensuring that your PDF documents are in black and white, not color. Don't include any unnecessary or extra documents that are not requested in the request for proposals. Don't include detailed graphics or pictures. Again, they're not requested in the request for proposals. And then you can also reduce the file size of your PDF documents by going to your Adobe program and saving as other and looking for the option in Save as Other of Reduce File Size. And once you click Reduce File Size, another little window will open, which will give you the option of compatibility. And we suggest that you make the compatibility with a version of Adobe of 8.0 or later. And that will help reduce the file size of your file so that you can attach them to the form. Once you have completed all those attachments and you're satisfied that you have the correct files attached, the next screen of the form is a data review and confirmation page. It is very important that you review this page thoroughly to ensure that all of the information that you've entered in the form is what you intended and is correct. If you find errors or any problems, you can use the previous button at the bottom left of the screens to navigate back to the section where the error is in the form and correct it. And then you can use the next buttons at the bottom of each screen on the right side to navigate back to this data review and confirmation page, to then check again, make sure that your correction has been made in the form. And then when you're ready to submit, you can click the Submit Application button that's at the bottom right side of this data review and confirmation page. Once you do that, you'll see an on-screen confirmation message. And while this submission is going on, do not navigate away from the page. Wait until you get this on-screen confirmation. And then if you're not the contact person who is to receive the email confirmation, then check with that person again before you close out to make sure that they receive the email confirmation. And then ask that person, if you're not that person, ask them to send it to you so you can verify that the data submitted is correct. Again, if you find any problems, you'll have to, at this point, go back in and resubmit the application, because once you've submitted the application, you can't return to it. If you need to re-enter, you'll have to submit everything again. And again, only the last application that you've submitted will be received. Be sure and keep the email confirmation for your records along with the request for proposals that you're applying under, and that signed certification page, and just copies of all your application materials, because the program office will not be returning any of that to you. So you will need all of that for your files. So at this point, I'm going to look over in the chat box and see what our questions are. There is a programmatic question. Joyce, is there a comprehensive list of qualifying public schools, including schools that may qualify despite not being Title I?
I'm sorry. talking, my phone was muted. There is a link in the application, in the RFP, that lists those schools that are eligible and do receive Title I funding. And so there wouldn't be, if you're not on that list, then you're not eligible to apply.
Thank you, Joyce.
You're welcome.
And seeing no other questions in the chat box, I'm just going to remind you again. Same reminders, these are important, but the big overall reminder is read the RFP carefully and completely. And it's just a good practice to read the RFP multiple times throughout your process of pulling your subgrant application together, because it is quite comprehensive. There are a lot of things that you might miss on a first reading that may be very important for the details of your application. So I encourage you to read it once before you start, refer to it throughout your process of pulling all your information and documents together, and then read through it again before you go in and start the online application form. There is another question in the chat box, Joyce, a question. We would choose feeder schools from this list, and I think that's referring to the list in the RFP.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, and that is the conclusion of my presentation. At this point, we'll open things back up for the program office to take any further questions at this time.
Okay. Thank you so much, Audrey. I do have one thing I want to just kind of reiterate, just thinking about the question someone asked about if there were priority points for serving students with disabilities. There are no priority points, but just keep in mind that the grant, if you receive the grant, you're expected to serve all students. So even students with disabilities can't be turned away because of a disability. And also, I wanted to mention, I saw Michael Muller online earlier. I did not introduce him, but he is also a part of our Office of Student Support group, and he has been helpful with getting the RFP and all of this kind of pulled together. So thank you, Michael. I know it's a lot of information, everybody, so just let's take a deep breath. You could do this. We will, if you just, remember everything that we've talked about, and you'll get the recording, as we've all stated, and Audrey just reminded, you can do this, just, take it in chunks, take your time, read over the RFP multiple times if you need to, set aside some time, but don't wait till the last minute, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So thank you all so much for joining us. I hope this has been not too overwhelming, but informative. And thank you all for participating. And thank you, 21st Century team, Grants Office, so much for putting this all together and presenting this to you. So if you don't have any other questions or any comments, so thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.